Computer. Hello, Sandrine. How are you?
Hi, I'm very well. Thank you for doing this, having us.
Yeah. And thanks for being open to the conversation. I was really excited to chat when we first met because we both you run a digital agency and I did that for a while, but we didn't have a multicultural or cross-cultural focus. And when I learned a little bit more about your work, I thought it would be really interesting for us to have a conversation about the intersection between kind of cross-cultural marketing and communications with culture and identity when it comes to talent and leadership development. So why don't you kick us off and just tell me about the agency and I don't know some of the favorite projects over the last couple of years.
For sure. Thank you. I'm glad we get to speak again and we get to do that. I'm the founder and the CEO of MIKADO. MIKADO is a 12-year-old, what we call multicultural marketing agency. We like to call it a culture first agency,
Mm.
where we try to develop marketing campaigns with a cultural angle, which means that we try to look at the universal truth of any culture or as a human and really then apply it with an ethnic cultural lens. So for instance, one of our campaign was it was for a food company, a
Mhm.
big food brand, and the universal truth is love is mom's cooking, and that's true for anyone, be it you can be from any origin, first,
Mhm.
second, third generation, any age. And so we took that umbrella campaign for their brand and then applied it and communicated visually and with different words based on what ethnicities we were focusing. So we had a campaign for Chinese Americans, Filipino Americans, South Asian Canadians, Arab, French. So kind of a global campaign in different multicultural markets around the world. So that's part of, or not part, but an example of what we do.
I
We're
love
a
it.
full service agency, so we do the strategy, the creative, and the execution for um, any ethnicity or ethnic minority in the world.
That is so exciting. That's so exciting. Like I wrote down universal truth because that's something that's like another way that our work intersects, right? But I had never thought of framing it that way, and that makes so much sense, right? There's a universal truth of shared experience, and your goal is to help clients connect with their customers, and my goal is helping leaders and teams understand the universal truth of our shared humanity. And then by virtue of that, we collaborate better, we innovate better.
Yeah.
Leaders and organizations get higher levels of engagement from their employees because hey, they're seen. We're connecting around our universal truth. That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
absolutely. I'm sure you can vouch for that even more than we do, but it all comes to we are all human, and that's our similarity, and why focus on anything else when, that's a truth.
Yeah.
But yes, exactly all the advantages that you were mentioning in terms of diversity in team and how productivity, creativity, everything just exponentially increases. I see it within our team, and it's great to work with a team that looks like the United Nations, different cultures, different backgrounds. And I think when you know that you come with that lens of everybody is kind of different in their own way, um, there's not much finger pointing. You know you're getting into this relationship of co-working, knowing that people will be different and you're just more accepting. And yeah, I don't know if you
Yeah.
see that as well, and that's what you base your strategies and your work on. But
Yeah, I love it. A relationship of co-working. Like that sounds just like it's a wonderful goal. I mean, the work of building inclusive culture, the reason it exists is because there aren't healthy relationships of co-working, but you're modeling it. We didn't get to, we never talked about your team. I mean, tell me about your team. All US based, or do you have an international team also?
Yes, we have international team. We went global right in 2020. So I have teams in Canada and also in Western Europe, in France.
Mhm.
So people are, and in Colombia, I'm forgetting.
Uh-huh.
And yes, they're from different ethnical backgrounds. I have someone from Lebanon, a few people from India, Colombia, French, Chinese, Filipino, Brazilian. So it's a it's a great mix. I'm sure I'm even forgetting, but
Yeah. It's fun. Like I've really enjoyed. I don't think I've gotten to lead strategic exercises or team meetings with that level of breadth of folks included. I just for me it would be so absolutely so thrilling, right? I mean, at the end of the day, when working with clients or designing strategy, you do need to go from the joy of exploration into strategic plans, deliverables, and milestones, which can be more tactical than purely creative. But I love the ideas that come out of a meeting with that many different voices.
oh, 100%.
Yeah.
We had this campaign we had to develop for a soup, a Chinese soup, and we brought the whole team. It's a small team. We're around 10 to 15 people, and we were all looking or staring at what are again the universal truths, or and trying to. We were a little bit blocked, and after a few hours, we were just joking that one of my teammates. She's Chinese American, and we always joke because she's on the East Coast, so a lot of the meetings are sometimes on lunchtime, and so we hear her slurp her soup, and so our campaign based on that joke became slurp slurp yum yum slurp slurp, and it did good. So again, it's really relying on insights that we notice every day, and that not pointing out in a manner of differentiating, but more in an accepting, identifying and accepting it. So it's a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
yeah. I love that. I love that. Like the talking point and tagline came out of like an audio experience of your colleague eating lunch.
It's great.
It's so
Um,
cool.
I don't know if you face the same thing, but and again, we started a decade ago, and what we were doing, we had to really explain what we were doing a lot. It was a lot of
Mhm.
education,
Mhm.
but now everybody talks about diversity and inclusion. But how do you tackle projects and make sure that they're not just a check box, like checking the box, and it's really done in an authentic manner?
It's a great question. There's this term that we both know called selling the category, and this is where you talk about the early stages of your agency and having to help companies understand that there's a whole missed market, and this is an
Yeah.
international community, regardless of where they're living. And now you're seeing greater awareness. And just as you mentioned, right? The practice of DEI has been a conversation that maybe HR leaders have been having for well over a decade, but now we're seeing larger financial investments, and the investment's exciting for me because as budgets grow, it gives me the opportunity to offer more services. And the way that New Sincerity as a firm is built is that my colleagues, the vast majority are women of color, and for most of them, it's a side hustle. There's a few full-time DEI practitioners that are doing other consulting work. But what I like to do is bring in folks with different experiences doing different work,
Yep.
and we'll do some recorded and some live sessions, and that creates this kind of interesting spontaneous dialogue where we can talk about the topics that are kind of on people's minds, right?
Yeah.
Psychological safety is part of the foundation of the strategic work that we do.
Yeah.
And we talk about psychological safety through the course of a dialogue because I know my clients, they're not going to read all the books up here. And it doesn't help me or their teams
Exactly.
if I say, hey, here's a reading list of 1,500 words, and if you don't do it, then you're not trying hard enough, and it's box checking, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was the CMO of a cybersecurity company. Things are moving extremely fast, and I ran an internal inclusion initiative based upon mission and some other goals, like diversifying the talent pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
And we did things like lunch and learns, and we
Yeah.
did lightning talks. And these as a training exercise, it's like 15 minutes. But what my goal is in the research that I've done says, hey, if we keep inclusion and the skills like active listening or cultural awareness, if we keep it top of mind with frequent short touch points, then the folks we want to pay attention the most, the senior leaders that are shaping policy, they'll get that continuity. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like training for a sports event, or getting back in school and saying, okay, I've got to learn. That means I have to do the reading and write the papers
Yeah.
a little bit every week, so
Yeah.
did that answer your question in terms of the
Yeah.
performative piece?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's a continuous work for sure. And
Yeah,
then
sure.
a little bit on the rational side, but how do you see progress? How do you measure the results?
Wow. Yeah, it's a key question. We build data into the work that we do, but I'm a little cautious about it because a lot of the measurement we see in DEI at the kind of enterprise and the mid-market level is just about headcount, right? How
Mm-hmm.
many people of color do we have in VP level roles?
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, it's going to be a small number, and we're not going to see month to month or quarterly growth skyrocketing, especially as a percentage basis. And what I'm finding is that the feeling internally, and certainly in the larger media, is nothing's working. We're not investing enough. This isn't happening.
Yeah.
And when I've gone into organizations and you start having conversations, the feedback is more nuanced. The
Yes.
diversity circle is connecting all sorts of people. Or there's a little bespoke mentorship and sponsorship organization that a couple people they just kind of created on their own. And they've
Mm-hmm.
got 2 business units and they have maybe 150 people, but now there's mentor relationships that are being born.
Yeah.
And I'm a like my colleagues know me as like an unstoppable optimist. If I hear that
Perfect.
news, I say we have to tell everybody about it, and they say, well, we're not there yet. And I'm like, for goodness sake, like, can we celebrate these moments?
Yeah.
The people that are in these mentor and sponsor relationships, they're they're elated. And so why not? If we say we haven't reached an end goal, in some ways we minimize the progress and the positive relationship. So when I do measurement, I'm looking for actually try and suggest a set of KPIs that
Mm-hmm.
are measuring smaller but still measurable outcome, and then I really tighten them up.
Yeah.
If you survey people too much, that can drive them kind of crazy. I think
I
employees are
agree.
over surveyed right now.
I
So
agree.
we do the 5 question survey, which is, it's really short. You get objective data too, rather than asking big questions. We ask incremental ones, and
Mm-hmm.
then it's like good performance reviews. So tell me this, like because you have to do performance reviews, and not everybody is a top or a high performer. We all have our moments, right? Do you use some form of the very simple sandwich approach of leading with something positive, addressing a challenge or an area for an improvement, and ending with a positive? Or do you do something kind of more involved?
I feel we do something more evolved, but Uh, I bring in I think, the Frenchness in me, and I
Oh,
was
tell me
not
about that.
really taught the way of doing the sandwich review, I guess. Um, no, I think it's more okay, this is how we are going to grow together to go here, because this is how I see it. When I have a team member who has a role, and if they're not where we think they should be, we meaning him and I, if it's a him,
Mhm.
we have to work together to get there. So what are the tools or support that the management can give, and vice versa? We listen to their feedback too, because most of the time there is something that's not 100% aligned if they cannot get where they want. And even when it's a personal situation, I need to make sure the environment is there so that even if there is a personal situation, they can still thrive in whatever they're supposed to do. So I don't know if it's the sandwich way.
Tell me more about the Frenchness. Like, obviously, given my work, like, I want to hear about that. Like, what feels different about the idea of kind of positive, negative, or challenging feedback and positive, and what you feel just brings more of your lived experience into review.
So I think in France, people are much more direct.
Okay.
You don't get out of a performance review thinking, oh, it went well. It's a performance review, and you're just told what was not working well,
Okay.
and that's all. And I don't know if you read this book, The Culture Map. It's an amazing book by uh, I'm forgetting her last name. First name is Erin, and she has graphs and different criteria that she rates each ethnicity by, and puts them in different situations. But in terms of no sugar coating, France is definitely on the higher side. I feel I've been here almost 20 years now, and I have learned to make it less, this is your fault, and this is what's not working, and really, like you said, working in tandem.
Hmm.
But yes, in France, it's a kind of black and white.
That's interesting, and this is something that um, yeah, I'm gonna look up the culture map. I think that sometimes when I have questions and we're talking about leadership development through the inclusive lens, um, this idea of just what is the way, and
Mm.
I struggle because I want to provide a clear path, but I also hear, because I have a lot of these conversations, that there isn't one way,
Yeah.
right? And so you're a female founder, and born and raised in Europe. So immediately your lived experience, your educational background, your cross-cultural, you bring a French style to performance reviews, which is more direct, and we have data to back that up. No sugarcoating. It's obviously it's working. There's probably other things that you're doing as a leader. I think that I mean, if I were to develop a theory, I would say it's because Sandrine has developed enough psychological safety that if she's direct in a review saying, "Hey, we need to improve in this area, this area, this area," the the team member knows that their job isn't in jeopardy, and they know that they're going to get the support that they need from you and from their direct report to to perform, to change what they're doing on A, B, and C. Does that feel like that might resonate? I mean, there has to be a reason why a more direct approach to leadership is working for your team.
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm not saying that over the last 12 years it's been always well received, but there was always this trust that you're talking about, that, there's a safety environment, like you mentioned. And I often compare it to how I mother my children as well, because
Mhm.
again, it's a very French style, and it's really you're doing this wrong. But it's not hoping, but I think it's working. Every time I tell them they're doing something wrong, it's not like, oh, my mom hates me, I'm leaving this house. They know there's the love as well. And then, yes, there are things that she wants us to work on. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that
to be
too.
working.
I feel that too. So we have a cross-cultural household. My wife is Korean, and I think the Korean and French have something in common in terms of directness.
Yes.
And I'm English Irish, and both family have been in the States for a while.
Mhm.
I can't say that I bring either English or Irish kind of cultural norms into the way that I parent, but because I have this background in mental health,
Mhm.
I sometimes I'm almost hyper vigilant about the way that I give and receive feedback to my kids. I probably
Yes.
give my kids performance reviews. That's just like that's
Yeah, unconsciously.
super
That's funny.
horrible. But I think that for those of us that we're striving for this balance of being um, leaders and folks that serve clients, and then we're also parents.
Mm.
We all those roles bleed over a little bit, especially during COVID. Did your kids overhear you like on Zoom meetings with clients and with your team?
Oh, 100%. I don't think my kids knew what I was doing before COVID. They just knew I leave the house and then come back from somewhere. But yeah, they definitely understand more what I do and how my day looks like. It was an interesting time.
Yeah, I mean, was that informative to them? Did it seem like, hey, that's interesting, or were they still just like, ah, whatever, mom?
No, I think they definitely found that interesting because they would actually hear us discuss campaigns, see my whole team, even though they have met my team, etc. But just
Mhm.
understanding who does what and oh, okay, Nahil is creative. Oh, that's great. Oh, maybe I could learn that or do that. They even started projecting themselves in jobs that they could do, which is fun to see for kids
Yeah,
when
that's
it's
super fun.
yeah.
It really is. I can't say that like my wife was a doctor, so in some ways you can't bring a hospital home, but she spent part of the pandemic working for the city of San Francisco,
Oh my.
creating COVID health policy.
Yeah.
So very stressful, and then very, medically team driven. I think that Leo and I both we tuned out long bureaucratic conversations because of the challenge of the tempo. But I brought my daughter in for cameos into a few different meetings because I have very human centered work, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I have her little pillow up here, and like I kind of included her in that process because like showing the whole self and vulnerability, like I intentionally kind of over index on that because I'm trying to model behavior, right? I worked in finance early on, and I worked in cyber, and I started a digital agency. So I've worked in a lot of kind of
Different.
grinding sort of industries, and now I get to do something that's a little bit last several years. It's a little bit more heart led. So
I love that. I would love actually to see where you would fall on the culture mapping that Mayer, her name is Erin Mayer, describes in the book, and where your wife falls as well. I think it'll be interesting
yeah, that would
culturally
be it,
the jobs
it would
that.
be it would be really neat. I do like some of those inventories. There's an inventory from Adobe. I think it's choosing a color, but
Mhm.
the inventory is not as deep as like a Myers-Briggs. I was trained to administer the Myers-Briggs test, and just long, it's involved, and there's the four-letter format is not, it's hard to translate in a meeting format, but
Mm.
Adobe comes up with kind of a shorter inventory, and I like when people can talk about their personalities with one another, because once again, I'm always trying to get people in group settings to be vulnerable because that builds trust, um, which builds inclusive workplaces. So I'm very
Mm.
goal oriented. So the Adobe one is interesting too, and it could be even a team exercise that you could do with your team just for fun.
I'll
So
check that out. Thank you. Yeah, I'm realizing in what you're saying that when you work with a team, especially when you work with a team, you have to make sure that each individual first knows themselves, they know themselves well in order to actually contribute to the
wow,
group.
well said.
Yeah.
Yeah, well said. It's there's this idea of influencing and managing up is a big part of what I share when I do coaching with early and mid-stage career folks is to help them realize that if they ask good, compelling questions of their boss, even about the work or about their trajectory, that confidence is it's kind of contagious.
Yeah.
And yes, there's toxic managers, and they are out there, but more often, I label it as indifference. There's managers that either are too overworked because they don't maintain boundaries to manage actively,
Mm.
and I will say, so did you approach your manager with that? That's a great idea. And they say, no, he wouldn't listen or she wouldn't listen. And I'm
Mhm.
like, but you haven't actually asked them because I was persuaded in this meeting. And they're like, no, I haven't. I was like, well, what do you think? And then they get really, I mean, like heads go in the hands and they're like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And what happened is that there wasn't quite, they needed a little bit more validation to be like, I'm just going to call a one-on-one because
Yeah.
my boss has missed the last two because she was just too busy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, just get on her calendar.
Mm.
Shows enthusiasm, interest, make a mini agenda. She's like, I can't make an agenda for my boss. And I'm like, I've been busy before. And when my team says, Michael, why don't we just work on these three things?
Yes.
And
It's
I'm like,
welcome. Yeah.
thank you.
Thank
I would
you.
actually rotate leadership around some of our meetings when I was at when I was at this nonprofit. And one of my team members was mortified at the idea. And I said, hey, there's just four of us here. We can do whatever we want to do. And then it was like the most structured meeting we've ever had. It was fantastic. So
Yeah, I love that. That's great.
right. Yeah, I encourage you to give all the meeting responsibilities to your team, and then you have all this free time.
Yeah, that's true.
Time to watch the US Open on TV.
And the soccer.
Well, let's so tell me what's coming up for MIKADO. Like what do you have on the horizon that's super exciting?
Finishing the year strong. Q3, Q4 is definitely our busiest time. A lot of the cultural holidays happen during this time.
Yeah.
So a lot of our big campaigns follow that. So there's the Mid-Autumn Festival for Chinese American, and then there's Diwali, which is the Indian New Year,
Yep.
and
Yep.
just goes on till like December, actually till January, February when there's Chinese New Year.
Yep.
So that's the core of our work happens around this time. And then at the same time, it's time when you start renewing contracts for the clients next year, So it's a busy time. In terms of overall MIKADO, we are reinforcing our teams internationally. So in Canada, in Western Europe, thinking also in partnering with the agencies in Middle East, in Australia.
Mm,
So we can start being truly global and not just do projects here and there. So
yeah, that's
um,
exciting. That's
yes,
exciting.
it is. It is.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like I have colleagues that have firms that do work with a lot of consumer brands, and if you're working with consumer brands, that the Q4 is critical, right?
Yeah.
Three-quarters of the revenue comes in during as you prepare for holiday season. But you're guided by a global celebration calendar of celebrations that are centered on cultural traditions, and that's really cool. It's very busy, but very cool. Yeah.
Yes, it is. And a lot of our clients are CPG clients. So yes, we need to get products off the shelves and this is the best time because during cultural or key moments, we call them, you consume more media, you talk more to your friends and family, the
Mhm.
word of mouth is more, you just
Got it. Yeah, that makes so much sense. That
so
makes
yeah,
sense. Just it's that.
marketing is so much more important during that time.
Yeah, I totally feel that. I totally feel that. Awesome. Awesome. Well, we'll wrap this up and then we'll like get it up on YouTube for folks. And there's a lot of things I know that you've shared here that'll be really helpful, especially for some of my other small and emerging clients that are doing both consulting work, but also early stage brands that understand the value of an international lens. So it's going to be super useful, lots of touch points. So
Great.
all right.
I loved the talk. There's so much for us to learn and apply just on how to work with our team. So it's been great.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Okay. Thanks, Andrew.
All right. Bye.